I was applying for a bunch of fast food jobs throughout late May because I knew I didn't want to sit around like last summer, just sitting around, doom scrolling, gaming all day. I wanted to work to get some money to, do something outside of the house. And, I applied for a bunch of restaurants, Whataburger, Brahms, Marco's Pizza, Chipotle, Canes, all that stuff. And most of them either didn't reach out to me or they just said, like, we're not taking anyone else. And the only two restaurants that came back to me were Whataburger and Marco's Pizza. And so Whataburger, the Whataburger I applied to, they offered me like $12 an hour, which isn't like too bad. It's pretty solid, and you get like all the benefits. 50% off for fast food, all that good stuff. And I was like, okay, it doesn't seem too bad. It's not like too far of a drive. It's like a 10-minute drive for me, so it wouldn't be the worst job. And then Marco's Pizza, right? I applied that one because like being a delivery driver, it sounds more fun than just staying inside Waterberg all day. I want to go out, drive out, listen to some music, all that good stuff, get some tips. And so I go in, we do the interview. It wasn't really an interview. It was more like me just filling out papers like W-4 and all that good stuff for Marco's Pizza. And the owner, he was like, dude, he was so chill. I mean, so was the Whataburger manager too. But like the Whataburger manager was like really chill. Was like he was like I guess like a stonehead kind of chill, right? The Marcos Pizza owner, right? He was chill. Me and him were making jokes. We were like laughing. It was again, it wasn't really an interview. It was more like me just filling out papers, and me and him were just talking about like random stuff. And so I was like, you know what? I like this owner. Delivery driver. It sounds more fun than just staying inside the restaurant all day, and I might make more money depending on how well the tips are. So I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna work at Marcos Pizza, right? And so I did. I've worked there for like 4 weeks now, and it's pretty solid. There's really not much um like thought behind it. Really, really all I do is just make the dough with the other insider. I prep the ingredients, the vegetables, the meats, all that stuff, and then I clean dishes. And then whenever I get deliveries, I deliver the pizzas, and then that's it. It's really not like a tough job. I mean, it's like of course it's like a minimum wage ish job. Like it's nothing like really extraordinary. Like and my mom and my brothers, they wanted me to be an insider because they're like, oh, like what if you get into crash, what if all this stuff, yada yada yada. But I was just like, like being delivery driver, it sounds fun. Like imagine you just go out, you listen to music, you're getting paid for it, and then you deliver the pizza, and then you just drive back, and you still listen to music, right? Like it sounds fun. It sounds like a good excuse to get out of the restaurant and do something else. And I've enjoyed it so far. One of the Saturdays I had like 14 trips, right? That's like the most I've had so far, and I was just having fun. I was delivering the pizzas. I was and it was just listening to music. Getting hyped up. Listen to a bunch of like those old songs from 2016, and it was just a good time. Like there's really not much complaining about it. All you do is just drive around, and you drive around more or less the area. Like there's some parts I'm not that familiar with because I don't really drive there, but most of it's pretty familiar, right? And I've actually learned like a good amount from the job itself, right? I've learned a lot about the the point of sale system, which I guess I had an intuition for it because when I was trying out the point of sale system the second day, I seemed to like understand it pretty well, and I've learned about the point of sale system. I've learned about customer, what's the word for it? I guess interpersonal skills with customers and all that stuff. Trying to give them their pizzas. Ask them what they want. What other stuff do they want? All that good stuff. And it and it's been like a pretty chill job. Like it's not as great as my previous job as a tutor. Like the tutor, I got paid a lot more money, and it felt, I guess, more impactful in a way. But this one, I'm not complaining about it. It's a job. It's a summer job. I'm probably getting paid more than the insiders. One delivery I delivered like 21 or 22 pizzas to a church, and they gave me like a $60 tip, and I was like, dude, $60 tip? That's like 6 hours worth of being an insider, bro, for free, literally. like the only like real difference between insiders and delivery drivers, like insiders and delivery drivers, they have more or less the same jobs. The only difference is that insiders, they make the pizzas and they make the subs, the subs, the salads and all that stuff. And then delivery drivers, they clean dishes and they also deliver pizza. That's really like the only main difference between the two, you know. And cleaning dishes, it's pretty chill. There's really, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's different. It's different than what I expected, to be honest. Because with when cleaning at home, you just have the dish soap and then you have water. That's it, right? Commercial dishwashers, right? They have the dish detergent and then they have sanitizer. You just you put the tray, you put the dish or whatever inside the dish detergent, clean it off with water, and then you put in the sanitizer, and then you put the sanitized dish onto the tray, onto the racks or whatever, right? Which I've never heard of like a sanitizer before, which like it was kind of an interesting experience because like really I wasn't even like scrubbing the dishes, like there was some like obviously like if it's like a dough tray or like a the dough mixer bowl, like obviously you have to scrub it because it's like hardened, right? But most of the dishes, right, all you have to do really is just rinse it out, put it in the dish detergent, let it sit there for like 30 seconds, take it out of the dish detergent, clean it off with water, and then put it in the sanitizer, and then take it out whenever you're done. And that's really all there is to it. Like the only hard dishes I have is like the dough trays because what I have to do is I will put one half of it into the dish detergent because it's not tall enough, right? And then I'll put the other half in it later, and then do the same thing with the sanitizer. And then the dough mixer bowl, that one's a really tough one to do because it's too big to fit into the the dishwasher itself. So what do I have to do, right? Usually, what I do is I take the water, rinse out the bowl a bit, get the scrub. I don't know if it's really a scrub. It's kind of just like a piece of paper. It's kind of just like a piece of paper. It's not even like a sponge or a proper scrub. But I call it a piece of paper. But I just take that, scrub it, dump the water out, and then what I would do is I put the scrub into the dish detergent, and then put the dish detergent and then put the scrub into the dough mixer bowl, clean it out, water it down, which is kind of hard to do because it's really big, so you kind of have to like adapt because you kind of have to like adjust and like make it work somehow. But I always make it work, and then do the same with the sanitizer, and then after that, boom, you're done. And you know, it's kind of a fun job, because you're really not doing because there's really not much stuff behind it. You're kind of just like zoning out most of the time, right? So what I do, I just sometimes I put on the AirPod in, listen to some music, or listen to whatever I want to listen to. Either that, or I just don't listen to anything, and I kind of just like just lock in. It's more or less the same process, right? I clock in, I make the dough, and then after you make the dough, you make a batch or two depending on how many you need. You prep the vegetables. Usually, I prep up the onions and the bell peppers, and then sometimes I prep up the pepperoni and sausage. Sometimes you prep out the tomato sauce as well. It depends, right? But generally speaking, after you make the dough, you prep the ingredients, and then after that, it's kind of just quiet for the most part, and really all you're doing is just waiting for deliveries and cleaning dishes in the meantime. And I've had pretty good experiences with deliveries for the most part. I've actually learned quite a lot about the deliveries. For example, the front there's two stations, the front station and then the back station. And the front station, they do print out receipts for your deliveries, right? When you put the delivery under your name and then you go deliver the pizza, right? But what happens is that usually it doesn't print out the full thing, especially if it's an apartment number, right? You need the apartment number, right? But the front station doesn't print. So what you have to do is you have to go to the back station to get the full receipt, right? And to see the apartment number and see if there's any instructions, right? Like if they say leave the piece at the door, you just leave the piece at the door, right? You don't knock, you don't do anything, right? You just leave the piece at the door. And and it took a while for me to understand that because I'll be delivering pizzas and then I would realize like I don't have the apartment number, right? So I'd have to call the number and be like, hey, what apartment number are you? And it took until someone like noticed. They were like, hey, you just go to the back station to get the receipt with the apartment number and any instructions on there, and then that's it, right? And it saved me like a lot of time, because sometimes I would just be sitting out in the apartment just waiting for like who knows 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just waiting for them to pick up. Because sometimes they wouldn't pick up for some reason, and I don't understand why. But that's just how it is. And you know, and I mean, there's really not much else to say about that, to be honest. But that's just how it is. It's a really easy job, and honestly, I feel like I get paid more than the insiders, right? Because I get reimbursements for it. It's a pretty generous reimbursement, I will say, for each trip. It's not, it's for each trip. It's not by mile. It's by each trip. So if you drive, whether you drive a mile or you drive 5 miles, right? Like you still get the same reimbursement. Which I think is pretty nice because most of the deliveries they tend to be like fewer than 4 miles, I would say, round trip. So I like that a lot. I know some people wouldn't. I know some people they would prefer mile, but the flat out reimbursement for each trip is pretty nice. And like I said, the biggest tip I got was a $60 tip. I think the second biggest I got was like a $25 tip for like another church, and also too like in the I guess employee book, technically you get like a $15 credit off of your pizzas, but what most people do, they just make their own pizzas. Like you can't make a large pizza, you can't make an extra large. Like they're not like that generous, but you can make your own medium pizza, put whatever toppings you want, put it in the oven, and then boom, you just take it home, right? And it's pretty nice. One coworker I had, he had this like he had some toppings on it. It was like Italian sausage with some garlic sauce. It looked really good. He offered me some, and I've had a bite, and I was like, man, that's really good. Probably too unhealthy for me, man. I'm not gonna lie. It's probably too unhealthy for me. But I've learned a lot from my coworkers, really. Like one of them one of them showed me how to get the back station receipt. Don't get the front station receipt. Just to get the full apartment number. And another one also showed me how to get tips if they didn't tip. So basically, the back station receipt. If didn't give me a tip yet, you could take the back station receipt and then have them sign off this with a signature and a tip if they offer it. Which sometimes they don't. Just whatever. I'm not like picky about tips. Like honestly, I could get no tips at all and get like probably a worse wage than the insiders, but I would still have fun with it, because driving is kind of fun. I don't complain about driving. I like driving, and and so that's what one of the coworkers taught me. Another coworker taught me, how to like make how to make the dough because I was doing a bad job at it, and so they're like, hey, this is how you do it. You just fold it like this, and then one of them showed me how to like you put it on the table, and you kind of just like rub it around in a circle, which was just a really nice tip because that really helps a lot. And another one, and then one of the delivery drivers, he showed me how to like do the deliveries. It was like the first day, so he puts the delivery under his name. We go to the location, and then we give him the pizza. Ask him if they want any peppers or cheese, and then they don't. So we go back, and then and then you just and then after you go back, you take the delivery out of your name, and then yeah, that's really all it is to it. So yeah, delivery driver, it's a pretty fun job. Like I really don't have any complaints about it. If anything, I kind of want more hours, but at the same time, like I have some days off, and it's like it's nice to have some days off. But I've yet to have a closing shift. That's the one thing I'll say. I've yet to have a closing shift. I've always had the opening shift. Like the only time I've had it close to like a closing shift was when I worked from like 4 o'clock to like 8:30. But like we closed way later than that. We closed way later than 8:30. So it's like I didn't really close. I was kind of just there for some reason, and then they just let me go. But yeah, I've always had the opening shift. I've yet to have a closing shift. And I'm not complaining about that. Like I would prefer having the opening shift over the closing shift because with the opening shift you just do the job and you come back home and you still have some time to eat dinner, shower, play games, do whatever you want. Right? If you have a closing shift, you gotta don't really have time on it. You're gonna have to do it beforehand if you even want to. But yeah, being a delivery driver, it's pretty fun. Like I don't really have any complaints about it. I have like 7 more weeks of that job left before I go back to university. So maybe I might make an update about this job. I don't really know, but we'll see.